Hi, I'm Mark from Greenmark Builders TV. In this episode, we're going to teach you how to build a wood handrail for your deck. To start off, you got to figure out what material you're going to use. We use these simple spindles. These are 42-inch spindles, which you can get at Home Depot, Lowe's, your hardware store. What I always like to do is make sure you pull all your staples out. You go right up against your stairs, put your first screw in the bottom. So go about 1 inch from the bottom, just so we don't split our wood, and go flush up with the bottom of your deck. Before you put your second screw in, you want to make sure you're level. And I go just below the top portion of the deck. And that should be level. Yes, sir. In this application, we're going to spice things up a little bit. Instead of going just with your 3.5 or 3 7/8 between each spindle, we're going to make it look a little nicer. What we're going to do is we're going to use a 3.5-inch spacer, which I've already cut to width. We're going to put it up to our last spindle, flush up with the bottom. I'm going to use the width of a spindle for our next piece. So put my spindle in there, flush up at the bottom. It's pretty easy. You kind of eyeball your width to make sure you're kind of keeping on track. Nice little trick is once you've set all your boards in, go and put your second screw in after. Just the first couple I put the second screw in just to kind of set my plumb. So anyways, you just keep on carrying through. Use your 3.5-inch spacer. Now if you're working by yourself, you want to save a little bit of time. It's easier than kind of balancing your screws and the boards. Just go set your bottom screw in all your boards. Then you can rock and roll. The reason I level my corners and put my second screw in, you just get everything started out straight. When you put your spacer blocks in, you just have a point of reference as you're going along. And now we're about to do the prep on our stairs. So what I like to do is I start by putting my first spindle right along the outside edge of the stairs, make a mark. And my first spindle is just going to go inside that mark. Put my first screw in, level up. Then what I do is I grab my board that I'm going to use for my top rail. And what I do is I set it down right on my stringer. Place it in, draw a line there. Then what we do is we bring the board down to the edge of our stringer like that. And you take your pencil and you mark the back side of one of your spindles here. And what that does is that gives you your top rail perfectly to where it needs to be. Set your saw up. You just play with it till you get the right angle. Because our top rail is going to be coming over the top of this, what I do is I mark 2 inches. And that line gets drawn across. You just take your square and mark that line. This isn't the best practice of what you're supposed to do, but I've been doing it my whole life. You put your angle against your back fence, make your cut. Now when we put our top board in, the cap for our beer holder is going to sit perfectly flush on the top there. Once you get your first one, just trace the second one, just like stairs. So this piece is going to get screwed in to the top here. We're gonna screw in there. Because I went 1.25 inches at the bottom, I used another spacer. You just bump it until you're perfectly 1.25 inches. Great, that looks like crap. All right. A good way of checking that your top rail is done properly, you take your tape and you run it on an angle with your straight, so it's coming at a right angle, your top rail. So I'm 24.25. You measure down here, I'm 24. So this end has to come up 1/4 inch. So I like to have all my spindles shooting from the top down. You see how this one isn't quite at the top? So what I'll do is I'll start from the stairs, then work it down, and I'll do just the same spacings I did before. Yeah, the only real trick I'm doing is I'm just keeping it flush here, so when I put my cap on, it runs perfectly with the top, and it's gonna look right when we're done. You can't afford to get that wrong. Trip to Home Depot, it's like 4 hours, dude. Now what we're doing, this last spindle, basically we had it down and the rest of them you see are up nice and flush there. So we'll just pull this out and we'll use this as our guide, bring this up perfect, then we're done. So when it comes to the other side, just mirror what you've done on that side, rock and roll. Another nice part about leveling your outside spindles is when it comes to putting the cap on, your measurement from the bottom is the same as your measurement from the top. So obviously we have the same amount of wood purchased here. So 23 3/8. So 23 3/8 gives us our top piece. Now you can either leave your deck like that, but what I like to do is I like to put a cap on the top so you can have a drink holder or something. Measure from your stairwell to the inside. So I've got 103 5/16. Then we're gonna miter it so then it comes nicely together. 103 5/16. There's either a butt joint where it butts in or a miter joint where you cut two angles, say if it's a 90, 245, and it comes together. We're doing 90s. Perfect, are we? What I do is I flush it up all the way along. You'll see I keep working it down. But when I get close to the end, I leave it. I go about 2 feet from the end without screwing it. So when it comes time to putting my other miter in, I still have a little bit of play. So when you're measuring your miter, you measure to the inside of your edge. So I pull it to where it needs to be. That's 121 7/8. The first job I do when I'm putting a miter together is I actually screw the miter together. By doing this, you're locking it in place. Then pull it to where it needs to go. So I'm gonna set that screw we held off on. Now that our miter's set, and that's gonna hold our miter together. It's the same as the other one. It's freaking one of those. Down to the line. Have to trim that. Good. For a recap, we put our first spindles in, level them up, use our spacers, keep checking with the level. Only put one screw in on all the rest of them. When you put your top boards in, level your outside, screw them, level your middle, screw them, use your spacers, keep the job flowing. When you put your miters together for your top board, make sure you screw your miter, pull everything into place, and that's how you put together a good looking deck. You give that a shake, it's not going anywhere. I'm Mark from Green Mark Builders TV. Don't forget to subscribe, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and we'll see you next time. Happy deck building.